This episode of Defending Truth is brought to you by Hope and Glory Press. Learn more at hopeandglorypress.com. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me today on another episode of Defending Truth. I'm very excited to have our guest today, Mark Hattas. He is an award-winning author of 7 books, a successful entrepreneur, and a transformative coach, passionately guiding others to live their divine purpose. His journey from business success to spiritual transformation has inspired many, leading him to share the path toward healing and purpose. Mark, how are you doing today?
Doing better now that I'm with you. This is great.
Oh, it's great to have you. I know it's been a while, and again, I know I apologized off air, but I'll apologize on air now. Our mutual friend Keith Little hooked us up an email a few months ago, and some circumstances have come up, and I've been very slow to respond. So I sincerely apologize to you and to Keith, and but everyone, you think you're in for a great conversation today.
Divine timing.
Yeah, amen to that. So you've recently written a book called The Lowly Prophet, which we're going to discuss today. Um, but first, I was looking into your background a little bit, and you attribute healing from, well, first, what brought on this book, The Lowly Prophet, if you don't mind sharing with us.
So, yeah, I had gone through a healing and transformational situation such that around 2015, I started hearing God talk to me, and it led to ultimately writing a number of books. So, in September of 23, I was meditating and praying. And God said, Mark, write The Lowly Prophet. And by that time, I was so accustomed to it, I just said, okay, what's it about? And so I got the information about what's it about. And then I got 18 chapter prompts. And then the most unique thing, which hadn't happened to me before, God said, I want you to start writing in 3 weeks and write and schedule 30 days and write 5 hours a day for 30 days. And so over those 3 weeks, William, I had a number of significant situations. One, which landed right on the day I was going to start writing, which without it, I wouldn't have written the book. It was just necessary. So 9 days later, after starting to write, the first draft was done. So this is a gift that I believe that we all have received. And I was a steward of the gift, and I want to be a good steward and share it with as many people as possible. It is a transformative story, a fictional story with Jesus. And people who read it, they say that they've never experienced Jesus this way.
Yeah, and it's in pre-release, and there's been a lot of great reviews. So one of them, I see your characters so clearly, and it's such a fun and easy read. Your whole book is so cool because it focuses on our relationship with Christ. I believe that's from your aunt, if I'm not mistaken. If
Yes.
I'm not,
She's one of
Shirley
the early
Jamil.
readers. Who's
And then
and she's
there's
also a writer.
Yeah, and there's another one. I resonate so much with this because Jesus is extremely fun in your book, and he's always been fun for me. So just a lot of great stuff happening with this book. Um, so 3 weeks, that's a whirlwind time to write a book for anyone that's ever written one. And you said 5 hours a day. So what was that process like? If you can like give us insight into what that 5 hours looked like per day.
Yeah. And actually, I had to wait 3 weeks. I only wrote for nine
Okay.
days. Now, there's been
Oh, okay, my
editing,
mistake.
there's been editing stuff, but it's even quicker. So ask your question again. What's it like to
Yeah, what was
write
that?
five hours a day?
Yeah, what was that period like? Like you said a lot of the stuff came to you from the Lord. What was that inspiration like? What was it like writing it that long per day, etc.?
So I'm looking at my couch over here. I have a couch with a laptop holder, and I put my laptop on and I pray, and I get the chapter prompts, right? I got all 18 of them up front.
Yeah.
And so what happens is I'll receive the opening, and then my hands just move. I mean, it's like the words just flow. and I'm almost witnessing the story as it's coming. And keep in mind, it's not like polished edited, right? There has to be that process, but
Right.
it's the bulk of the story. It's like coming out, coming out, coming out. And I attribute it to being almost like a streaming service. But
Okay.
it's when we're in that full relationship and we're in tune with our divine gifts, and everyone has them. They're like seeds that when they're nourished, they grow and blossom. And when we embrace the gifts that we have, new gifts often start to come online. And this is a gift. This is something that I am thankful for. It's God given, and I get to witness it. So it's almost like witnessing a story come out of my mind, body, hands onto the screen.
All right. Fantastic. Now, in reading your background, um, you had said that you had dealt with some mental health issues in the past, and you attribute your healing from that crisis to the Beatitudes, and it sounds like it could be a fascinating story. How did God introduce that to you?
All right, so this is wild, and I don't know, to some of your listeners, they might think like, "Is that real?" But it's how it happened. So I went through a mental health crisis starting in 2011, and between 2011 and 2014, I was in and out of the hospital 3 times, struggling, told there's no cure, take these pills, you'll be on this medication the rest of your life, balancing it.
Right.
And I remember after a TED talk, I had an out of body experience doing a TED talk. It was the strangest thing. It's online. It's a horrible talk. I don't recommend watching it, but it was so embarrassing. And I shortly after that prayed and I said, "Hey God, if there's a way to heal this, show me the way. I'm yours." And my hand, without me lifting it, right? If I said, "William, lift your hand," you could lift your hand. My hand just lifted off my lap. And I used to keep about a dozen books on the side of my bed. I like reading multiple things, and the Bible's there and other things. And I grabbed this one book, and actually, it's right behind me. I'm going to grab it.
Sure.
It's this book, Teresa of Avila, An Extraordinary Life. And it's a story. It's her life story. She's a 16th century mystic, and I opened up to a certain page. I mean, just my hands just opened the book, and I started reading it, and it described very similar experiences to what I went through when I was in a bipolar manic episode. And that's what I was diagnosed with. And I started to laugh, and my wife said, "What's so funny?" And I said, "Well, honey, if St. Teresa were alive today, she would have been locked up too." And it was the first of many, I mean, hundreds and hundreds of breadcrumbs that God brought into my life. And one of the things that occurred is there's this author, Michael Rice, who wrote a book called Why Is This Happening to Me Again? And he was someone who was pivotal because he did these intensives. And at the intensive, which through serendipity, because my wife didn't want me to go, didn't want me to go, didn't want me to go. And so he finally calls me months later to invite me because someone had canceled. And I said, "Hey, I don't think so. By the way, I'm on vacation anyway. We were down in Sarasota." And my wife um, was at the beach with the kids. And he said, "Well, where in Sarasota?" I said, "Well, the Siesta Key, Sarasota Surf and Racket Club." He said, "Mark, I'm a mile down the road." Now, keep in mind, he lived in Missouri,
Wow.
and someone had just gifted him their condo. So he and his wife drove there, and we happened to be there at the same time. I'm like, "Okay, God, something's happening here." So we meet for coffee. I go to the thing. And one of the pieces, which I didn't fully grok or get at the time, was he taught the Beatitudes as part of his workshop, but not like I'd ever heard it. And over the years, I turned on to these Beatitudes such that I realized that was the healing process. but not like, the blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. It's like, well, what does that mean? Well, it turns
Right.
out that the Beatitudes, you can't do Beatitude 2 without 1, you can't do 3 without 2. So the lowly prophet, what it turns out in the pages of the book is it takes the reader through a fictional story, but incorporates all 10 Beatitudes, because I break them into 10 numbers, all 10 Beatitudes throughout the characters. You can see the Beatitudes in practice. And then there's an app that is in development right now. I have it being used by a pre-release group that allows for people to practice them themselves. So it's a real integrated book/program. And these Beatitudes are absolutely the foundation of what led me to healing. Because through doing them, I received the divine insight. I received the message of where to go, which doctors to see. And that came through that calm, that quiet, that prayer, that letting go of having to do it a certain way. There's so much in these Beatitudes that help us unwind and receive the gifts of the Holy Spirit to unwind all the effects of our errors and purify our being so that we're whole with our Creator. And it's absolutely extraordinary, and anyone can do it. So yes, the Beatitudes, the Beatitudes, the Beatitudes. Practice, practice, practice. Learn them as a practice if you haven't. And this is one of the ways that I'm bringing that out.
Yeah, the Beatitudes are they're powerful. I mean, let's just be honest. I mean, Matthew chapter 5, go ahead and check them out. Meditate on those things. Now, how would you recommend that someone begin that process with the Beatitudes?
Well, there's a couple of different ways. So, boy, there's a lot of different ways. We actually create in the book, and I encourage people to go to thelowlyprophet.com /defending truth. And if you go there, you can actually start reading and get introduced. It'll give you the first, I think, I don't know, 17, 18 pages for free. And you'll also be invited to join a free monthly prayer group, and you'll get an activation prayer. There's some pretty cool stuff there, all for free. So for your listeners, if they want to go there, thelowlyprophet.com /defending truth, we'll start that journey for them. And then I'll keep you abreast of the Lowly Prophet coming out. I think it's a great way to do it. But one of the things that we also did is we created a program called Beatitudes Practice.
Mhm.
Dave Austin and Kathy Austin and I co-created that. And it's at beatitudespractice.com. So if you want to jump right to the Beatitudes, you don't want the story or anything, but there is a gift in just searching, just start to seek. For example, the first beatitude, if you take all the language out and you say, okay, what's the practice and what's the payoff, right? What's the promise that Jesus is saying? At the core, he's saying, hey, make your home in the holy breath of God. And when we make our home, right, to be poor in spirit, to empty ourselves, to empty into the holy breath of God, to trust in that. What happens is we receive the divine insight. We receive that heavenly insight that comes. So what blocks it is holding our breath under stress. And think of a kid who's
Mm.
scared, they'll lock up.
Yeah.
So if we just bring the breath to that and relax, what happens is we'll have a better idea of what to do in the moment. We'll receive divine insight. And it happens the same way every time. The only thing that might block it is if we're stuck on an emotion, which leads to Beatitude 2, which is to mourn. And to mourn is to let go of, it's to release attachment to the hurts and the pains and the traumas. It's to allow for that to move as you breathe. That's why I mean you can't do 2 without 1. And they keep going like that. Ultimately, it leads to the full restoration of what Jesus promised and taught the disciples. He's teaching us. It's active today. It's very practical. It's very applicable.
I also noticed on your website, again, that's the lowlyprophet.com, that you have a reading and meeting schedule. Now, I know that some of that's already began, but can you tell us what our listeners um may be in for if they choose to join you on Zoom and
Oh,
go
actually,
go
so
into that?
the link you have, William, is a private link that isn't public.
Oh, okay.
So there's a pre-release reading group, and we meet on Zoom once a week.
Gotcha.
People are, and
Okay.
we're reading 3, 4 chapters at a time. And they can even purchase the physical copy, which I have in my hands, and you could get. But I don't. We're not sharing that just yet because the full release is March of 25. So if you want to stay abreast, or I might even do a third pre-release group. If you want to be part of that pre-release group, join the free community at thelowlyprophet.com/defending truth. And that's the list I'll draw from for a third group. So if you're interested and you want to hear more and you might want
Okay.
to read this before the public gets it, that's the place to go. And I'll send you an invite when and if I do that. And because I'm putting it out here on the radio, I might just do that. So if you go sign up, it will encourage me. So we work together.
Well, sorry to put you on the spot like that. All right. Well, Mark, I thank you. Our time is coming up here. I thank you so much for joining me. Check out the book, The Lowly Prophet. Check it out, thelowlyprophet.com. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us and sharing your work with us. You're doing great work out there. So God bless you for doing it.
Thank you. Bless you as well.